material in Guatemala, as in much of Latin America, was a major factor responsible for the high numbers of fatalities resulting from the 1976 earthquake. Relatively minor tremors would cause houses to collapse with very little warning on sleeping occupants. In the recovery from the disaster, which took many years, rebuilt houses in seismically active zones abandoned the use of adobe and used much more resilient building materials and techniques than had been the case prior to the earthquake. It was clear that people who occupied adobe homes in remote villages were, for the most part, also among the poorest citizens in a poor country. Poverty is well known to be associated with inadequate housing, reduced access to transportation and quality health care, and so on. All of these factors contribute to low resiliency and greatly increased vulnerability to disasters. Although I am not aware of any specific data, there is good reason to worry that the academic trajectory of children may have been disrupted for extended periods in communities badly affected by the quake. Many of these children were likely to also have experienced loss of loved ones or neighbors, long-term lack of permanent housing, and disrupted daily routines. All of these conditions are factors that may contribute to profound psychological trauma. It is clear that natural threats can create megadisasters when they affect large numbers of people, especially if impacted individuals are vulnerable because of pre-existing socioeconomic conditions, chronic health conditions, age, disabilities, or other factors. We now live in a world that faces a more diverse range of threats than we imagined or considered in 1976. In Rethinking Readiness, Jeff Schlegelmilch has laid out some of the more important and most impactful potential megadisasters that we need to prevent or mitigate. Cyber threats, superbugs, and the consequences of the climate crisis are on the minds of disaster planners, and with good reason. However, some of the lessons that should have been learned over the years need to be updated and applied to our understanding of modern-day threats. That's why this book is so compelling. Concepts ranging from the mundane, such as making housing more resilient to likely disaster scenarios, to the more sophisticated and nuanced considerations, such as protecting cyber-vulnerable electrical grids, professionally managing relief supplies, including short-term and long-term mental health providers as part of response teams, and so forth, are all increasingly critical to effective planning. But successful prevention or planning for 21st century disaster threats begins with really understanding, very specifically, what we are worried about. A particular word about urgency. The extraordinary and growing intensity of the climate crisis has been described in great detail by many scientists and advocates. What's important to emphasize, however, is how much accelerated planetary warming has exacerbated the threats of many disasters, from severe coastal storms and flooding of cities to droughts and wildfires. And along these concerns are a major host of challenges associated with human behaviors in the face of such disasters. Mass population movements and violent conflicts are increasingly likely post-disaster realities. All of this suggests that we have no time to waste in controlling the rise of planetary surface temperatures and making sure that we do what needs to be done to mitigate the consequences of climate change. Jeff Schlegelmilch is one of the nation's experts regarding many aspects of preventing, mitigating, and recovering from large-scale disasters. For anyone interested in understanding the specific threats that face our world and how we'll need to rethink coping strategies, this book is essential. It wasn't long ago that disaster planning and response was almost exclusively the domain of first responders. In fact, the capacity and professionalism of responders could not be more important. But we now know that a strong academic base consisting of evidence-based policies and procedures dedicated to disasters is also essential. This makes Rethinking Readiness appropriate for people who wish to pursue disaster studies as a career. That said, this book is also essential and highly engaging for policymakers, elected officials, and concerned citizens who wish to understand what we could be facing in the years to come.